You've just asked your child to clean their room for the third time today. They look at you, roll their eyes, and walk away as though you never spoke. You feel that familiar frustration rising, the same one that leaves you questioning your parenting. Why won't they just listen, you whisper to yourself. But deep down, you know it's not just about the toys on the floor, it's about something deeper. What if, instead of trying harder to control their behavior, you could reach their heart, the place where real change begins? That's the promise at the heart of Shepherding a Child's Heart by Tedd Tripp. It's not a parenting book filled with quick fixes or behavior charts. It's a guide for parents who want to move past frustration and learn how to truly guide their child from the inside out, with compassion, patience, and purpose. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore what it really means to shepherd your child's heart, how to move beyond simply managing outward behavior, and instead nurture character, wisdom, and love. Whether your child is 3 or 13, these lessons offer a way to parent with calm, understanding, and hope. Chapter 1. Parenting, as Tripp explains, is not just about stopping tantrums, enforcing rules, or keeping kids in line. Those are surface-level issues, the outer layers of what's really happening. He invites us to look deeper, beneath the behavior, to the heart, that invisible space inside every child where motives, beliefs, desires, and struggles live. He says something that feels both obvious and profound: your child's behavior is a window to their heart. When a child lies, disobeys, or throws a tantrum, it's not just an act of rebellion. It's a clue, a signal revealing what's happening within. Maybe fear, pride, insecurity, or simply confusion. Imagine this scene: your 6-year-old hits their sibling for taking a toy. Most parents instinctively focus on the behavior: don't hit your brother. And of course, that's necessary. But what if you paused and asked yourself, what's driving this? Maybe it's jealousy, maybe a sense of injustice: he always gets what he wants. Or maybe your child just doesn't know how to express frustration yet. When you address the why behind the behavior, you're shepherding the heart. Tripp reminds parents that this kind of insight takes patience. It's much easier to manage behavior than to reach hearts. You can reward good actions or punish bad ones and see results, for a moment. But surface correction doesn't build wisdom or love, it builds fear or compliance. He gently warns parents not to confuse outward obedience with inward growth. A quiet, well-behaved child might simply be hiding their feelings to avoid punishment. True parenting success isn't raising compliant kids, it's raising children who understand right and wrong from the heart and want to do what's good because they believe in it, not because they're afraid of consequences. Tripp says, with the parent's own heart. The way we respond, in anger, patience, pride, or humility, reflects our own inner world. When we're frustrated or harsh, it's often because we're trying to control what we can't truly control, our child's will. But the truth is, only love, empathy, and guidance can influence the heart. Rules and discipline matter, but they must always flow from relationship, not fear. He offers a comforting truth: you're not alone in this struggle. Every parent, even the most patient, faces moments of failure. What matters most is returning, again and again, to connection. When your child sees that you care more about understanding them than judging them, trust begins to grow. And from trust, real change happens. Tripp also reminds us that children don't need perfect parents, they need parents who are honest, humble, and willing to learn alongside them. If you can say, "I was wrong," or "let's try that again," you're teaching your child something more powerful than rules, you're modeling grace. The goal, he says, is not control, but influence. And influence begins with listening, empathy, and presence. Think about the last time your child misbehaved. What if, instead of reacting, you slowed down and said, "Tell me what happened. How were you feeling?" It's not permissive, it's compassionate guidance. That's what shepherding looks like. Parenting from the heart takes courage. It's slow work. But it creates something lasting, a deep relationship where your child feels seen, heard, and loved, not just managed. And so, in this first chapter, Tripp invites parents to shift their vision. Stop measuring success by how quickly you can stop bad behavior. Instead, measure it by how often you can reach your child's heart. Chapter 2. Every parent wants to raise a child who's kind, responsible, and respectful. But somewhere along the way, many of us start believing that getting there is about control, controlling how our children act, speak, and respond. We begin to think that if we can just get them to behave, we're doing something right. But Tedd Tripp reminds us that parenting is not just about shaping behavior, it's about shaping beliefs, motives, and ultimately, the heart. He paints a familiar picture: a child sits at the dinner table, refusing to eat the vegetables on their plate. The parent says, "Eat your broccoli." The child folds their arms, a silent act of defiance. The parent, tired and irritated, threatens, "If you don't eat it, no dessert." The child sighs, takes a bite, and the battle ends. On the outside, obedience was achieved. But what happened inside that child's heart? Did they learn trust, or just compliance? Did they understand love and respect, or did they learn how to submit under pressure? To the heart of parenting. He says that every time we engage with our child, we're not only correcting behavior, we're shaping how they understand authority, love, and even God. Our responses teach them what matters most in life. If we lead with control and punishment, we teach fear. If we lead with guidance and relationship, we teach wisdom and grace. He uses the word shepherd with purpose. A shepherd doesn't just command, he leads gently. He knows his sheep, their needs, their weaknesses, their tendencies. In the same way, parenting is not about power but about knowing our children intimately. Understanding their fears, their triggers, their desires, and their strengths allows us to guide them wisely instead of reacting in frustration. Tripp shares that a parent's first job is not to have all the answers but to stay curious about their child's heart. He encourages parents to look at discipline not as punishment, but as discipleship. The root of discipline means to teach. That means every moment of disobedience, every argument, every tear-filled meltdown is a teaching moment, an opportunity to help a child understand what's going on inside them and how to handle it. Let's imagine another everyday scene. A 10-year-old comes home upset after losing a soccer game. They slam their backpack down and shout, "I hate this stupid sport." You could correct the words, tell them not to talk like that, or punish the attitude. But Tripp would gently ask, what's behind that outburst? Maybe it's embarrassment. Maybe disappointment. Maybe they're afraid of failure. Shepherding the heart means stepping into that moment, putting an arm around them, and saying, "You're really frustrated, huh? Losing hurts sometimes." Then, in that safety, teaching follows. You can talk about effort, courage, and learning, not shame. Tripp warns that when we focus too much on obedience as the end goal, we often miss the bigger picture. Behavior can be forced, but heart change is nurtured. And children who grow up under constant correction without connection often become skilled at performing, saying the right things, doing what's expected, but inside, they may feel unseen or misunderstood. That's why some kids, who seem so well-behaved in early years, struggle deeply as teens. Their outward obedience masked an inner distance. Parents, he says, must slow down enough to listen. Listening doesn't mean you agree with everything your child says, it means you value what they feel. Listening tells your child, you matter. Your heart matters. That sense of being valued builds the bridge over which all discipline can safely travel. Tripp also speaks to something many parents don't often think about, how their own emotions shape their child's heart. When you yell, criticize, or withdraw, your child learns how to respond to pressure and disappointment. They're watching not just what you say but how you live. If they see you handle conflict with calm and forgiveness, they learn that too. He reminds parents, you are the most powerful model your child will ever have. You're not just teaching rules, you're demonstrating what a healthy, grounded human being looks like. And here's the truth that brings both comfort and challenge: parenting from the heart means letting go of perfection. You will fail, sometimes daily. You will lose patience, say the wrong thing, or react before you think. But even those moments are opportunities. When you apologize and take responsibility, you show your child what humility and grace look like. They see that making mistakes doesn't mean the end of love, it means the beginning of growth. Tripp helps parents understand that love and discipline aren't opposites, they're partners. Real love wants the best for a child, and real discipline teaches them how to live with wisdom and self-control. But both must come from a heart of compassion, not frustration. It's about saying, I'm not against you, I'm for you. I want to help you learn what's right because I love you. He reminds parents that children thrive when they know their parents' authority is rooted in love, not fear. Rules alone don't give security, relationship does. When a child knows that even correction comes from a place of care, their heart opens instead of hardening. By the end of this chapter, one truth becomes clear: parenting is not about managing behavior but about shaping belief. Every response, every tone, every conversation whispers something into a child's heart about who they are and how loved they are. And when that love becomes the foundation, obedience naturally grows out of trust, not fear. Tripp closes this section with a simple but powerful thought: you're not raising a child to get them through childhood, you're raising a person to live a life. The way you shape their heart today will echo through their choices, their relationships, and their faith for years to come. That's what it means to shepherd, not to control, but to guide, protect, and nurture the heart so it can grow toward goodness. Chapter 3. Every parent, at some point, has said the words, "I just don't understand why my child does that." Maybe it's the toddler who throws a tantrum in the grocery store aisle, the 8-year-old who lies about finishing homework, or the teenager who slams the door after every disagreement. It's easy to see the what of a child's actions, but not always the why. And this, Tedd Tripp explains, is where many of us managing what our children do, but rarely take time to understand why they do it. In this chapter, Tripp invites parents to slow down and ask the deeper question: what is my child's heart believing right now? He reminds us that every action springs from a belief. When a child refuses to share, it's not because they don't understand the rule, it's because, in that moment, they believe that having the toy brings more happiness than kindness does. When they lie, it's not because they don't know lying is wrong, it's because they believe the truth will cost them love, or approval, or comfort. Every act of defiance has a story beneath it, and that story is written in the heart. Tripp helps us see that this is not about excusing bad behavior. It's about seeing it clearly, about understanding that children, like adults, act from desires, fears, and beliefs that shape their choices. He often says that behavior is the visible expression of invisible beliefs. When you see your child acting out, you're not just dealing with rebellion, you're witnessing a small heart trying to make sense of the world. He tells parents that the heart is not just the emotional center, it's the control center. The heart drives the mind, the will, and the emotions. When the heart is aligned with truth and love, behavior naturally follows. But when the heart is driven by fear, pride, or selfishness, it produces confusion and conflict. That's why parenting focused only on rules will always fall short. Rules can restrain behavior for a moment, but only truth can reshape the heart. Imagine a parent who's always correcting without connecting, constantly saying, "Stop doing that, don't say that," or "Why can't you just listen?" Over time, the child begins to hear one message: "You're a problem to be fixed." But when a parent learns to look beneath the surface, to ask, "What are you feeling right now?" or "What were you hoping would happen?" the message changes. The child begins to feel, "You care about me, not just what I do." And that's the beginning of heart transformation. Tripp shares a moving truth here: children learn about God first through their parents. When a parent is harsh, distant, or unpredictable, the child begins to believe that love must be earned or that mistakes mean rejection. But when a parent is consistent, calm, and forgiving, they learn that love can be trusted, that grace is real. You are, in many ways, your child's first picture of love, forgiveness, and authority. This realization can feel heavy, but Tripp offers comfort too. He reminds us that no parent can do this perfectly. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. It's being intentional enough to pause before reacting, to breathe before scolding, and to lead from empathy instead of anger. That small pause, that heartbeat of grace, can change the tone of your home. Your child spills juice all over the carpet, again. You feel your frustration rising. You want to shout, "How many times do I have to tell you to be careful?" But what if, instead, you saw this as a moment of shepherding? You take a deep breath, remind yourself that this is a learning moment, not a test of control. You might say, "I know that was an accident. Let's clean it together. But can you think of a way we can avoid this next time?" In that simple shift, your child experiences correction, responsibility, and grace, all at once. This approach, Tripp says, builds trust. And trust is the soil in which the heart grows. Without trust, discipline feels like rejection. With trust, discipline feels like love. Children will listen to correction when they know they are deeply cared for. He encourages parents to see discipline as more than a reaction, it's preparation. You're not just dealing with today's disobedience, you're shaping tomorrow's heart. When your child learns that love remains steady even when they fail, they begin to internalize that love. Over time, that love becomes their own inner voice, the one that guides them when you're no longer there to correct or remind them. Tripp's message in this chapter is also for the parent's heart. He acknowledges how exhausting it can be to constantly navigate behavior and emotions. Parents often live in guilt, feeling like they're either too strict or too soft, too reactive or too permissive. But he gently reminds us that parenting is not about getting every response right. It's about staying present, teachable, and rooted in love. He encourages parents to ask themselves, what is shaping my own heart right now? Are you reacting from impatience, fear, or pride? Or are you leading from compassion and hope? Children mirror the emotional tone of the home, they draw their calm, security, and confidence from us. When our hearts are at peace, theirs begin to settle too. Tripp calls this kind of parenting heart-to-heart connection. It's a slower, deeper kind of work, one that requires empathy and time. But its fruits last a lifetime. When you help your child understand not just what they did wrong, but why, and how to make it right, you're raising a child who thinks, feels, and chooses from love rather than fear. By the end of this chapter, Tripp leaves parents with one transformative truth: you cannot change your child's heart, but you can guide it. You can point the way, show grace, and teach wisdom, but change must grow from within. That's why your role isn't to fix, but to shepherd. To walk beside your child through their mistakes, emotions, and choices, teaching them that love and truth always walk hand in hand. And that's the beauty of shepherding. It's not about controlling your child's journey, but about walking it with them, with patience, prayer, and presence. One of the most delicate balances in parenting is the tension between authority and love. Too much control, and you risk breaking connection. Too little, and you lose guidance and safety. Tedd Tripp explains that true authority doesn't come from threats or power, it comes from relationship, respect, and trust. He begins by describing how, in our modern world, the idea of parental authority has become somewhat confusing. Many parents fear being too strict, while others swing the opposite way, giving children freedom long before they're ready for it. But Tripp gently reminds us that authority isn't about domination, it's about shepherding. A shepherd has authority, but his authority exists to guide, protect, and serve. He makes a profound observation: when you give your child direction, you're not controlling them, you're leading them toward life. That changes everything. Imagine your family like a small flock. The parent walks ahead, showing the way, watching for danger, and ensuring the path is clear. The children, sometimes wandering, sometimes running ahead, always know where to look when they feel lost. That's what authority in love looks like, not fear-based control, but steady, trustworthy leadership. Tripp reminds us that children need authority. Without boundaries, they feel anxious and insecure, even if they can't express it. A lack of structure makes them feel unprotected, as though no one is steering the ship. When parents lovingly provide boundaries and guidance, children feel safe, even when they resist it at first. But, he warns, the way we exercise that authority makes all the difference. Harsh control teaches fear, calm leadership builds trust. Authority detached from relationship feels cold. But authority rooted in love feels safe, predictable, and fair. He tells parents to see themselves as guides, not referees. A referee enforces rules and hands out penalties, a guide walks beside and explains the path ahead. Think of how you'd help a child cross a busy street. You'd hold their hand, explain the danger, and lead them across. You wouldn't just yell from the sidewalk, "Be careful." In the same way, real authority is deeply relational. Tripp offers this insight: when you discipline from anger, you're demanding change for your sake. When you discipline from love, you're guiding change for your child's sake. That's the difference between control and care. A mother notices her teenage daughter becoming increasingly withdrawn, slamming doors, rolling eyes, staying on her phone for hours. The mother's first instinct is to lay down stricter rules: no phone after dinner, no friends until grades improve. But after reading Tripp's approach, she decides to start differently. One evening, she knocks softly on her daughter's door, sits down beside her, and says, "I've noticed you've been quiet lately. What's going on?" The daughter shrugs, defensive at first. But over time, through that consistent gentleness, the wall begins to come down. That's authority at its best: patient, steady, full of love that listens before correcting. Tripp reminds parents that the foundation of authority isn't the ability to enforce, but the willingness to serve. A shepherd's authority is earned by his care. Parents earn that same respect by showing their children, day after day, that boundaries come from love, not control. And here's something deeply comforting: children actually crave that kind of leadership. They may resist it on the surface, argue, roll their eyes, test limits, but deep inside, they long for the security that comes from knowing someone wiser and stronger is guiding them. Tripp challenges parents to reflect on how they use authority in their homes. Do you lead with presence or with power? Do your children obey out of fear or trust? When you say no, does it come from a heart that wants to protect or a heart that wants to control? He's honest that this kind of leadership isn't easy. It requires self-control from the parent, an emotional steadiness that children can depend on. When parents lose their temper, shout, or shame their child, they unintentionally teach that anger equals power. Over time, this can lead children to either rebel or shrink in fear. But when discipline is calm, clear, and anchored in love, children begin to internalize that calm as their own. He gives a beautiful image here: a home should be like a peaceful harbor. The world outside is full of noise, pressure, and storms, but inside the home, there should be safety, consistency, and love. And the parent is the captain of that harbor, the one who sets the tone. Tripp also talks about how discipline, when done right, is not punishment, it's correction with a goal. Punishment says, "You did wrong, and now you must pay." Correction says, "You did wrong, but I'll walk with you as you learn to make it right." That shift changes the atmosphere in a home from fear to growth. He encourages parents to slow down discipline moments. Instead of reacting immediately, take a breath. Look at your child's face. Ask, "What's happening in your heart right now?" Listen. Then guide. These moments not only shape your child's understanding of right and wrong, they shape how they view love itself. Reminder: authority that mirrors love is most powerful when it's consistent. Children need to know that your yes means yes and your no means no. Consistency builds trust. When parents are unpredictable, harsh one day and permissive the next, children don't know what to expect. They feel unsafe, and that uncertainty breeds insecurity. He shares this truth simply: your authority, expressed through love, gives your child rest. As the chapter unfolds, Tripp circles back to the heart of shepherding, the parent's posture. The way you see your role determines everything. If you see your child as a problem to fix, your tone will be hard. If you see them as a person to guide, your tone will be patient. If you see parenting as a power struggle, every correction feels like a fight. But if you see it as an opportunity to lead in love, every correction becomes a bridge to connection. He closes with a reminder that authority and affection are not enemies, they belong together. Real authority protects, real love guides. When children see that your rules are an extension of your care, not your control, their hearts begin to trust you even in correction. And trust, once planted, becomes the soil where character grows. By the end of this chapter, one truth shines bright: parenting from authority is not about demanding obedience, it's about building a relationship strong enough that obedience flows from love. When your child knows that your leadership is a form of love, they stop resisting and start resting in it. And in that rest, their heart becomes open, ready to be shepherded, not just managed. Chapter 5. If you've ever found yourself standing in front of your child, exhausted after repeating the same lesson for the 100th time, you know the quiet ache that sits in a parent's heart. You've explained, corrected, reasoned, and yet the same behavior keeps reappearing. Maybe it's lying, talking back, defiance, or withdrawal. You start to wonder, am I failing as a parent? Tedd Tripp begins this chapter with deep empathy for that exact moment. He reminds parents that change is not just about correction, it's about connection. Discipline is not simply about stopping bad behavior, it's about shepherding a child's heart toward wisdom and love. And that journey takes time, patience, and consistent compassion. He says that when parents discipline without connection, they get short-term compliance but long-term resistance. But when correction flows through relationship, the child's heart stays open, even in moments of tension. A mother scolds her son for being rude to his sister. "Say you're sorry," she demands. The boy mumbles, "Sorry," without even looking up. On the surface, the problem seems solved. But nothing has really changed. The boy's heart is still closed, resentful, maybe even humiliated. Tripp gently asks, what if that same moment could have gone differently? What if, instead of demanding an apology, the mother took a moment to breathe, crouched down to his level, and said softly, "Hey, that was hurtful. What's going on? Are you upset about something?" That pause, that choice to engage the heart before enforcing behavior, creates a bridge. The boy might grumble at first, but over time, he learns that love doesn't just correct him, it understands him. Tripp calls this kind of parenting grace-filled discipline. It doesn't mean ignoring disobedience. It means seeing correction as an act of love, not anger. The goal isn't to make the child feel bad, but to help them see the truth about their actions and how they affect others. He reminds us that correction isn't just about what the child did wrong, but what they can learn through it. That small shift changes the atmosphere of discipline completely. Instead of an argument, it becomes a teaching moment. Instead of fear, there's reflection. Tripp emphasizes that every correction moment should do three things: connect, teach, and restore. Connection says, "I still love you." Teaching says, "Here's what went wrong." Restoration says, "Let's make it right together." When a parent corrects without connection, the child's focus stays on avoiding punishment. But when correction includes connection, the child begins to understand responsibility. They see that even when they fail, they are still loved, still seen, and still capable of growth. He gives a heartfelt reminder: you're not just teaching your child how to behave, you're teaching them how to repent, to seek forgiveness, and to repair relationships. Those lessons reach far beyond childhood, they shape who your child becomes in adulthood. Tripp tells a story that many parents will recognize. A little girl spills milk all over the kitchen floor, then bursts into tears because she knows she's about to be scolded. But her father kneels down, smiles gently, and says, "It's okay, honey. Everyone makes mistakes. Let's clean it up together." The correction, "Be careful next time," still comes, but it's wrapped in connection. That moment teaches her something powerful: mistakes don't destroy love, they deepen and challenges the idea that parents must win every conflict. Tripp says that when discipline becomes about power, both the parent and child lose. But when it becomes about growth, everyone wins. You don't have to crush your child's will, you have to guide it. The heart of discipline is not dominance but direction, showing your child the path to wisdom without breaking their spirit along the way. He also reminds parents that the way they talk during correction matters as much as what they say. Tone, facial expression, and body language all communicate as loudly as words. A harsh tone might stop behavior quickly, but a calm tone invites understanding. When a child feels safe in correction, they're more likely to listen, reflect, and change. Tripp offers this gentle challenge: if your discipline leaves your child afraid, ashamed, or resentful, it's time to pause and reevaluate your approach. The goal is never to push your child away, but to draw them closer, even when they've messed up. He points out that one of the greatest gifts a parent can give is emotional safety. When children know they can bring their failures, fears, and feelings to you without fear of rejection, their hearts stay teachable. That safety becomes the foundation for lifelong openness. At this point, Tripp also turns the mirror toward the parent. He asks, what's happening in your heart when you discipline? Are you angry? Embarrassed? Frustrated? Are you trying to control, or are you trying to teach? He reminds parents that children often mirror their parents' emotional tone. When you bring calm, they learn calm. When you bring empathy, they learn empathy. He says something that feels almost like a sigh of relief: parenting is less about fixing your child and more about being transformed alongside them. Every moment of correction is also a moment of self-growth, a test of patience, humility, and compassion. By the end of this chapter, Tripp returns to the image of the shepherd. A shepherd doesn't just steer the sheep away from danger, he leads them back when they wander. He doesn't shame them for getting lost, he rejoices when they're found. In the same way, a parent's correction should always end with restoration, a hug, a smile, a reminder that love remains. Because in the end, what stays with a child is not just the rule they broke or the lesson they learned, it's how they felt while learning it. If correction feels like love, it leaves peace. If correction feels like rejection, it leaves fear. Tripp leaves parents with a powerful truth: the heart of correction is not control, it's connection. And every time you correct with love, you're whispering to your child's heart, you are safe, you are loved, and you can grow. That is the essence of shepherding, not ruling from above, but walking beside. Not punishing mistakes, but guiding hearts toward wisdom, one loving correction at a time. There's a quiet truth that Tedd Tripp reminds every parent of: the best time to shape a child's heart is not in the moment of conflict, but before it happens. In this chapter, he talks about the importance of intentional training, how parents can prepare their children's hearts in times of calm, not chaos. Most of us, he says, wait until things go wrong to start teaching. But just as you wouldn't teach a child how to swim while they're already drowning, you shouldn't wait for a meltdown to start guiding your child's heart. He begins with a gentle but profound observation: parenting is proactive, not reactive. When you parent from crisis to crisis, only reacting when things fall apart, your home becomes a place of tension. But when you take time to guide and teach in moments of peace, you give your child tools for life. He paints a simple image: imagine your child's heart as a garden. If you only pull weeds when they appear, the garden will always look messy. But if you nurture the soil, water it regularly, and plant good seeds, the weeds will have less room to grow. In the same way, heart training means planting truth, kindness, and wisdom before frustration takes root. Tripp explains that one of the most powerful ways to do this is through conversation. He encourages parents to talk with their children about life, not just rules. When your child feels safe to talk, when you listen without rushing to fix or scold, you become their trusted guide. These conversations, he says, are not small, they are sacred moments where values are formed and hearts are shaped. He gives a beautiful example. A father takes a walk with his young son after school. They talk about the day, the friends, the little arguments that happened on the playground. The father listens patiently, occasionally asking, "How did that make you feel?" or "What do you think you could do differently next time?" No lectures, no harsh tones, just guidance through gentle curiosity. Over time, those conversations train the heart. They teach the child to think, to feel, to empathize, and to reflect. Tripp says this kind of heart training begins with relationship. Children learn best when they feel seen, valued, and understood. Parents who invest in connection during calm moments often find that discipline becomes easier later. Why? Because trust is already there. He shares a truth many parents overlook: a child who feels connected to you will accept correction from you. That connection doesn't happen in a single talk, it's built through daily moments of presence, play, laughter, parents to ask themselves, am I only interacting with my child when something goes wrong? If so, the child learns to associate your presence with pressure. But if you consistently engage even when things are right, through small affirmations, shared routines, or simple questions like, what was the best part of your day? Your child begins to feel emotionally anchored. He reminds us that correction is just one piece of parenting, instruction is the foundation. When children understand the why behind what you ask, they're more likely to follow through willingly. Because I said so might stop behavior temporarily, but understanding why something matters helps the heart to mature. Let's take a common scenario. A mother tells her son not to interrupt. He obeys for a while, but soon does it again. Instead of scolding, she takes a moment later in the day to explain, when we interrupt, it makes others feel unheard. Let's try listening fully before speaking, it shows respect. The child doesn't just learn a rule, he learns empathy. Tripp calls this heart language, the art of speaking to your child's inner world instead of only their actions. It's the difference between saying, stop yelling, and saying, I can see you're upset, let's find a calmer way to talk about it. One shuts down emotion, the other guides it. He reminds parents that children's hearts are tender, especially when they're young. That's why the early years are so crucial. It's much easier to shape a child's beliefs and habits before they harden. He says, the habits of the heart, like the habits of the body, are best learned young. But he's also careful to comfort parents who feel like they've missed that window. He says it's never too late. Whether your child is 5 or 15, every day offers new chances to build trust and connection. The heart can always be softened through love, patience, and consistent care. Tripp also speaks about the power of example, how children learn not just from what you say, but from who you are. If you want your child to speak gently to them. If you want them to tell the truth even when it's hard. If you want them to show kindness, let them see you showing kindness to others. The heart, he reminds us, learns by imitation. He gives this beautiful line, you are the first living book your child will ever read. Every gesture, every sigh, every reaction teaches them something about life and love. When you model humility, forgiveness, and calmness, they learn to do the same. Tripp also helps parents understand the role of routine in heart training. Predictability gives children security. Simple rhythms, shared meals, bedtime talks, family prayer, morning greetings, create emotional anchors. These moments tell your child, you belong. You're safe. You're loved. That safety prepares their heart to receive. Be intentional with the words they speak. Words can shape a child's identity for life. When you say, you're always so careless, it wounds. But when you say, I know you can do this carefully, let's try again, it empowers. Words can plant confidence or shame, and a heart that grows under shame becomes defensive, while a heart nurtured in love becomes open. He closes this chapter with a quiet but powerful reminder, don't just correct your child's behavior, train their heart in peace. Parenting isn't about waiting for trouble to appear, it's about preparing your child's heart so that when trouble comes, they already know how to respond. Because when the storms of life hit, peer pressure, fear, disappointment, what steadies a child is not your control, but the lessons you planted in calm seasons. And perhaps that's what this whole chapter is about, being a gardener, not a firefighter. Don't wait to extinguish flames, plant seeds that make fires less likely to start. Don't just react when your child disobeys, guide their heart long before that moment. In the end, Tripp reminds us that a shepherd doesn't just show up when a sheep wanders, he walks with them daily. He leads them to green pastures, teaches them where to find safety, and builds trust long before danger appears. That's what parents are called to do, to walk daily with their children's hearts, preparing them for life with steady love and wisdom. Chapter 7. Parenting often feels like a long series of "don't do that" moments: don't hit, don't yell, don't lie, don't ignore me. We want so badly to help our children do right that we focus almost entirely on what we can see, their behavior. But Tedd Tripp invites us to slow down and look deeper. In this chapter, he reminds parents that correction is not about fixing what's visible, it's about understanding what's invisible, the heart. He begins with a simple truth that feels both humbling and freeing: when your child misbehaves, they're not just breaking a rule, they're revealing something about their heart. And your job as a parent isn't to suppress that revelation, it's to respond with wisdom and love. Imagine your child refuses to share their toys. On the surface, it's selfishness. But if you look closer, there might be fear of losing what's theirs, fear of not having enough. Or imagine a teenager who talks back. Behind the disrespect might be hurt, frustration, or a need to feel understood. When you look beyond the action and ask, "What's going on inside?" you stop fighting your child and start guiding correct behavior. We raise children who appear well-behaved but remain untransformed inside. It's like polishing an apple that's already bruised underneath. It looks good for a while, but the inside is still rotting. Parents can get so caught up in compliance that they miss the deeper invitation, to shape the child's inner life with truth, empathy, and grace. He tells a story of a young boy named Josh. Josh had a habit of lying about small things: breaking a toy, forgetting his homework, blaming his sister. His parents punished him each time, and he promised to do better, but the lying continued. One day, his father decided to try something different. He sat with Josh and said quietly, "I'm not angry. I just want to understand what makes it hard for you to tell the truth." At first, Josh said nothing. Then he whispered, "I'm scared you'll be mad." That moment changed everything. The father realized the lies weren't about disobedience, they were about fear. The correction, then, wasn't punishment, it was reassurance. "You can always tell me the truth," the father said, "and I'll still love you." That day, honesty began to grow in Josh's heart, not because he feared punishment, but because he felt safe enough to be real. Tripp explains that true correction restores, not shames. It seeks to reconcile the child's heart back to love, to God, to others, to their own sense of peace. When a parent scolds harshly or punishes out of anger, the message that sticks isn't, "I did wrong," but "I am wrong." And that's a wound that lingers for years. But when correction comes with empathy, when a parent kneels, makes eye contact, and says, "I know that wasn't right, but I still love you," the heart softens. It learns that discipline is not rejection, it's guidance. He uses the metaphor of a shepherd again, one who uses his staff not to beat the sheep, but to gently guide it back to safety. The purpose isn't pain, it's direction. Likewise, discipline should never humiliate or distance a child, but bring them closer to truth, to connection, to trust. Tripp also challenges parents to check their own hearts before correcting. A parent can't shepherd the heart of a child if their own heart is untended. He invites you to pause before reacting, to ask, "Am I correcting out of love or out of frustration? Am I guiding or simply venting my anger?" Because children can always tell the difference. They may not articulate it, but they can feel it. A child corrected in anger learns fear, a child corrected in love learns wisdom. A mother finds her daughter drawing on the wall. Instead of yelling, she takes a breath, crouches beside her, and says softly, "That's a beautiful drawing, but walls aren't for drawing, are they? Let's find a better place." She helps the little girl clean up, then gives her paper and crayons. The daughter learns a lesson, yes, but she also learns that mistakes don't define her, and that correction doesn't mean disconnection. Tripp reminds us that the heart of correction is relationship. The goal isn't to win battles but to win your child's heart. Every confrontation, he says, is a crossroads. It can either push your child away or draw them closer. What makes the difference is whether they feel loved through it. He also talks about consistency. Correction loses its power when it feels unpredictable, calm one day, furious the next. Children thrive when they know what to expect. A steady parent builds trust, an erratic one builds anxiety. So he urges parents to discipline with calmness and fairness, always anchored in love. But even more than consistency, Tripp speaks about grace, that mysterious ingredient that transforms correction from control into compassion. Grace says, "You did wrong, but you are still deeply loved." It's the message at the heart of the gospel and, he believes, the most powerful message a parent can give. In one story, a father describes how his teenage son came home past curfew. The father could have grounded him or exploded in anger. Instead, he said, "I'm disappointed, but I know you're growing and learning. I want you to understand why this matters, not just because it's a rule, but because I worry about your safety." His son didn't rebel, he listened. That conversation opened a door, not a wall. Tripp says it's easy to confuse control with influence, but control is temporary, while influence lasts a lifetime. When you discipline harshly, you might control your child for a moment, but when you guide their heart, you influence who they become. He challenges parents to see correction as a form of love in action, love that wants the best for a child, even when it's uncomfortable. But that love must always feel safe. If your child fears your presence more than they trust your heart, he writes, you've lost your influence. So he encourages parents to build a culture of grace in the home, where mistakes become moments of growth, not humiliation. Where children learn that failure is part of learning, and forgiveness is always available. As the chapter closes, Tripp returns to a simple but profound truth: correction is about restoration. When your child does wrong, you're not just addressing the behavior, you're inviting their heart back into alignment with love. You're saying, you wandered, but you still belong. The meaning of shepherding. It's not about control or punishment. It's about guidance, grace, and a relentless commitment to love your child through their struggles. Because when correction flows from connection, even the hardest moments become holy ground, where a child's heart learns what love truly looks like. Chapter 8. Authority. It's a word that can make parents feel powerful one moment and helpless the next. We all know that children need guidance, but in an age where control is often confused with care, many parents swing between two extremes, either ruling with too heavy a hand or backing away completely for fear of being too strict. Tedd Tripp gently leads us back to the middle ground, the place where authority becomes love expressed through guidance, not dominance. He reminds us that true authority doesn't crush a child's spirit, it shapes it. It doesn't demand blind obedience, it teaches understanding. He begins by pointing out a powerful truth: a parent's authority is not about control, but stewardship. When you become a parent, you're entrusted with the sacred task of shaping another soul, one that doesn't belong to you, but to God. You're not the owner of your child's life, you're the shepherd of their heart. That shift in perspective changes everything. It takes the pressure off making your child behave and replaces it with the responsibility of guiding them toward wisdom. Tripp says that too many parents misunderstand what authority is for. They see it as a means to get kids to obey instantly, to make life smoother, quieter, and more convenient. But when authority becomes about your own comfort, frustration grows on both sides. You start seeing your child's disobedience as a personal threat, not an opportunity for teaching. He tells a story of a father who constantly shouted commands: do this. Don't do that. Because I said so. The house was filled with tension. The children obeyed when he was watching but rebelled when he wasn't. Over time, the father realized he wasn't leading, he was intimidating. His authority demanded fear, not respect. Tripp gently explains that when fear drives obedience, love fades. And when love fades, influence disappears. True authority, he writes, reflects the way God leads us: firm yet gentle, just yet merciful. It invites, it teaches, it corrects with compassion. The purpose of parental authority isn't to build control, but to build trust and character. He compares it to a gardener tending a young plant. You stake the plant upright not to restrict it, but to help it grow straight and strong. Authority gives structure, not suffocation. Without it, children grow wild and confused. With too much of it, they grow fearful and resentful. But with balanced, loving authority, modern culture's idea that parents and children should be equals. While respect should always go both ways, he reminds parents that children don't need a best friend, they need a guide. You're not your child's peer, he says. You're their leader. And leadership, in its healthiest form, is service, a love that takes responsibility for another's well-being. He describes moments when children push boundaries, not because they're bad, but because they're learning where safety ends. Imagine a toddler running toward the road. A permissive parent might hesitate to sound harsh. But Tripp says loving authority means you step in firmly, you draw clear lines that say, this is for your safety. This is because I love you. Children need those boundaries like they need air, not to restrict them, but to protect them. At the same time, Tripp warns against the misuse of authority, the kind that humiliates, shames, or controls through anger. That kind of power doesn't shepherd a heart, it hardens it. He reminds us that when parents use their authority to vent frustration, they teach children to associate obedience with fear. Over time, fear breeds secrecy, rebellion, and mistrust. Instead, he invites parents to lead with humility, to model the very submission they ask of their children. That means being willing to admit mistakes, to say, I was wrong, or I got angry, or can we try again? Children learn what authority looks like not from perfection, but from integrity. There's a powerful moment in this chapter where Tripp asks parents to look inward. Do your children obey because they trust your love or because they fear your reaction? It's a piercing question, but it opens the heart. Because at the core of authority lies relationship, and no relationship thrives under fear. He tells a story of a mother who struggled with her teenage daughter's defiance. Every conversation turned into a battle. One evening, instead of lecturing, the mother said quietly, I know you're angry. But I'm not against you. I love you too much to stop caring what you do. The daughter didn't respond right away, but something shifted. The next day, she came back and said, I'm sorry for yelling. That moment wasn't about winning an argument, it was about restoring connection through authority rooted in love. Tripp also reminds parents that the foundation of authority is consistency. If you change your tone, rules, or reactions based on your mood, children learn unpredictability instead of stability. Consistent love builds emotional security. It helps your child trust that your yes means yes, and your no means no, not because you're rigid, but because your boundaries are reliable. Between two types of parents, those who try to command respect and those who quietly earn it. The first uses words like weapons, you better listen. The second uses actions that prove love, showing up, listening deeply, guiding patiently. Over time, it's the second that wins a child's heart. Tripp's central message here is that authority must always point a child toward wisdom and self-control. You don't just want obedience in the moment, you want understanding for life. When your child obeys because they understand why, they begin to internalize your values. That's how external rules become internal convictions. He encourages parents to use authority as a bridge, not a wall, a way of connecting their children to truth, not separating them with fear. And he closes the chapter with this beautiful idea: the goal of authority is not to produce compliance but to nurture conscience. Because one day, your child will grow beyond your rules. They'll face choices you can't control. In those moments, it won't be your power that guides them, it'll be the voice of wisdom and love that you planted through years of gentle, consistent authority. When a parent understands this, authority stops feeling like a battle for control and starts feeling like a sacred partnership in growth. You stop saying, how do I make my child obey, and start asking, how do I help their heart choose what's right, even when I'm not there? That, Tripp reminds us, is the essence of shepherding. To guide, not dominate. To shape, not suppress. To love in a way that builds conscience, character, and trust. Chapter 9. Every parent knows that raising a child isn't a one-size-fits-all journey. What works for your toddler may not work for your teenager. A gentle word that comforts a 5-year-old might spark an argument with a 15-year-old. Tedd Tripp helps parents understand why this happens and how to shepherd their child's heart wisely through each stage of growth. He reminds us that a child's development is not just physical or intellectual, it's spiritual and emotional. The way a parent guides the heart must grow and mature as the child does. Tripp divides childhood into 3 main stages: the early years, the childhood years, and the teenage years. Each season comes with its own joys, struggles, and lessons, and each one requires a different kind of shepherding. He begins with infancy and early childhood, roughly from birth to age 5. At this stage, children are like blank slates, full of wonder, curiosity, and emotion. But they are also self-focused by nature. They want what they want, and they want it now. Parents often interpret this as defiance, but Tripp helps us see it as an early opportunity to teach the concept of trust and profound picture. When a parent gently teaches a toddler to stop touching something dangerous, or to wait before getting what they want, they are not just enforcing rules, they are shaping the heart. The child begins to learn, Mommy and Daddy's guidance is for my good. Tripp reminds parents that discipline in these early years should be clear, consistent, and calm. It's not about harsh punishment but about helping the child begin to understand that choices have consequences. When parents use calm firmness instead of emotional reactions, children begin to associate obedience with love and safety, not fear. He recalls a story of a young mother whose toddler often threw food during mealtime. She would plead and negotiate, hoping to reason with her child. But reasoning only works when reasoning is possible, and at 2 years old, logic takes a back seat to emotion. Tripp guided her to respond with calm consistency: food stays on the table. If it's thrown, mealtime is over. Within a few days, the child learned what no lecture could teach, that boundaries exist for peace, not punishment. As children grow into the middle years of childhood, roughly 6 to 12, their world expands. School, friends, and activities begin to shape their sense of self. Tripp explains that this is the time when parents must begin shifting from simple correction to meaningful conversation. The goal now is not just obedience but understanding. At this stage, children start to ask, why? Why can't I watch that show? Why do I have to say sorry? Why do we go to church? Why do I have to tell the truth? These questions are not rebellion, they're curiosity in disguise. Tripp encourages parents to welcome those questions, to treat them as invitations for connection, not challenges to authority. He describes a father who once scolded his son for asking too many questions. The child became silent and withdrawn. But later, the father realized that questions are how children think, how they trust. The father apologized and began responding with patience. Over time, the son's heart opened again. When you teach truth with patience, Tripp says, you build understanding that lasts longer than obedience. During this middle stage, parents also face the temptation to rely too heavily on praise or punishment. Tripp gently warns that both can backfire if they become the only motivators. Children begin to behave only for rewards or to avoid trouble. Instead, he invites parents to focus on the why behind good behavior, to help children connect right choices to inner values, not just external consequences. Imagine your child tells the truth even when it's hard. Instead of saying, "Good job, I'm proud of you," try saying, "That took courage, and it shows how honest your heart is." This subtle shift moves the focus from approval to character, from doing good for praise to doing good because it's right, the stage that tests every parent's patience and faith. Tripp reminds us that adolescence isn't rebellion by default, it's a season of discovery. Teens are learning who they are and what they believe. The boundaries of childhood are giving way to the independence of adulthood. This transition can feel like an emotional tug-of-war for both parent and child. Tripp encourages parents not to take distance or disagreement personally. When a teenager pushes back, it's not necessarily rejection, it's often an attempt to make sense of the world. The best thing a parent can do in this stage is to listen deeply and stay present. Even when your teen acts like they don't care, they're watching you, how you react, how you speak, how you love. He recalls the story of a mother whose teenage daughter became distant and secretive. The mother's instinct was to control, to check her phone, set stricter rules, demand explanations. But instead, she chose a different approach. She started leaving notes on her daughter's desk: "I love you. I'm here when you're ready to talk." Days turned into weeks, but eventually, the daughter opened up. "I was afraid you'd be angry," she said. The mother replied, "I'm not angry. I'm just on your side." That's what Tripp calls shepherding the heart, not managing behavior. When parents use empathy instead of anxiety, connection grows. Teens don't need perfect parents, they need safe ones, parents who stay steady when emotions swirl. Tripp reminds us that authority shifts as children grow. You move from director in early childhood, to coach in middle childhood, to counselor in the teen years. Each role has a different kind of influence, but all depend on relationship. The closer your heart connection, the more your words will matter. He also encourages parents to model humility through their own mistakes. Teenagers, especially, respect honesty more than perfection. Saying, "I'm sorry," doesn't weaken your authority, it strengthens trust. It tells your child, we're on the same journey of learning. The chapter closes with a truth that feels both comforting and challenging: parenting isn't about controlling outcomes but cultivating hearts. You can't prevent every mistake, but you can create an environment where growth is safe. You can't decide who your child becomes, but you can shape the soil that nurtures their roots. Tripp compares this to shepherding sheep through different terrains: gentle meadows, rocky hills, or dark valleys. The shepherd's job is not to force the path, but to stay near, to guide, to protect, and to call the sheep back when they wander. That's what parents are called to do, not to control every step, but to love through every stage. Toddler, child, or teen, the heart of a child is always listening. It listens not just to your words but to your tone, your patience, your consistency, and your love. And when love leads, the heart follows. Chapter 10. There's a quiet truth about parenting that we often forget: the biggest lessons don't happen during lectures or punishments. They happen in the ordinary moments: the car rides, bedtime talks, small frustrations, and shared laughter. Tedd Tripp begins this chapter by helping parents see that every moment with their child is a chance to shepherd their heart. He describes parenting not as a series of big, teaching moments, but as a rhythm, 1,000 small interactions that build trust, shape values, and reveal what love looks like. When a child spills milk, when they forget their homework, when they lie about brushing their teeth, these aren't just annoyances, they are opportunities. Opportunities to teach, to connect, and to show what grace looks like. Tripp reminds us that children live most of their life in the small moments, and that's where they learn who we truly are as parents. It's not the one-time talk about honesty that teaches honesty, it's how we respond when they tell the truth about breaking something. It's not the big lecture about respect, it's how we treat them when they make a mistake. He tells the story of a father who was frustrated because his 8-year-old son never seemed to listen. Every morning felt like a battle: brush your teeth. Get your backpack. Stop fighting with your sister. The father confessed that he felt like a broken record. Tripp helped him see that the issue wasn't the child's stubbornness, it was the pattern of communication. The father was constantly managing behavior but rarely connecting to the heart. Instead of commands, Tripp encouraged him to slow down, to kneel beside his son and ask, "Hey buddy, what's making mornings hard for you?" That one change, shifting from orders to curiosity, changed everything. The child wasn't resisting the task, he was craving connection. When children feel seen, they naturally want to cooperate. Tripp explains that this kind of parenting builds not just obedience, but relationship. Tripp emphasizes that a child's heart is like soft clay, easily shaped, but only when handled gently. Harsh reactions harden that clay, gentle consistency keeps it moldable. A raised voice, sarcasm, or shame may stop bad behavior in the short term, but it damages trust in the long term. Parents who want to reach their child's heart must lead with empathy, even in correction. Discipline should never separate you from your child, it should draw you closer. Imagine your child lies about finishing their homework. The easy route is to punish, no screen time for a week. But a shepherd's approach sounds more like, I can see it was hard for you to be honest about this. Let's talk about why. That doesn't mean you ignore consequences, it means you tie them to understanding. The goal isn't to control the behavior, it's to teach wisdom. Tripp invites parents to see themselves as guides, not judges. Judges deliver sentences, guides walk alongside. And when you see yourself as a guide, your language changes. Instead of, why did you do that again, you might say, help me understand what was going on in your mind when that happened. That small shift opens the heart rather than closing it. He also talks about the importance of calm consistency. Children feel safe when they know what to expect from you, when your yes means yes and your no means no. If parents constantly change rules or give in out of guilt, kids learn to manipulate rather than trust. Shepherding a child's heart means staying steady, even when emotions run high. Tripp doesn't shy away from talking about correction. He knows discipline is part of love, but he redefines it. Discipline, he says, isn't about payback, it's about restoration. The goal is to bring a child back into relationship, not to make them pay for their mistake. He gives an example of a 6-year-old who took candy from a store without asking. The parents' response wasn't anger but guidance. They took the child back to the store, helped them apologize to the shopkeeper, and pay for the candy. The child learned a powerful lesson, not through shame, but through responsibility and reconciliation. Tripp explains that this kind of parenting teaches grace with truth, a lesson that will echo for a lifetime. Then he turns to the role of conversation. Tripp believes that talking with your child, really talking, is one of the most powerful tools for shepherding the heart. He encourages parents to create open, judgment-free spaces where kids can talk about what they feel, what they fear, and what they dream. Conversations like these plant seeds of trust that make correction easier later. He shares that parents often underestimate how much children long to be understood. Sometimes, a child acts out not to get attention but to express confusion, sadness, or fear. When you respond with empathy instead of irritation, you help them name their feelings, and once feelings are named, if you don't reach the heart, behavior will always return. You can control a child temporarily through threats or punishment, but true change happens only when the heart shifts. That's why every small moment matters, they accumulate, shaping how a child sees love, authority, and even themselves. He also reminds parents that how they handle their own emotions matters just as much. Children mirror the emotional tone of their home. If you respond to stress with patience, they learn calm. If you handle mistakes with humility, they learn accountability. If you show forgiveness, they learn compassion. Parenting, Tripp says, is as much about who you're becoming as it is about who they're becoming. One of the most touching stories he shares is about a father who always tucked his son in with the words, "There's nothing you could ever do that would make me stop loving you." Years later, when the boy made a serious mistake as a teenager, he said through tears, "Dad, I thought of those words before I told you. I knew I could come to you." That's the fruit of heart-centered parenting, a relationship strong enough to handle failure. As Tripp closes this chapter, he brings it full circle. Parenting is a long conversation, not a single event. It's not about perfection, but about presence. It's about showing your child, again and again, that your love is steady, your guidance is firm, and your heart is open. He reminds us, you're not just raising a child to behave, you're shaping a soul to love, to think, and to grow. Every meal, every bedtime, every argument, every apology, they're all part of the same story. A story of grace, guidance, and growth. Chapter 11. By this point in the book, Tedd Tripp has already given parents a new way of seeing their role, not as rule enforcers, but as heart shapers. In Chapter 11, he takes that vision and gives it real hands and feet. Because understanding a child's heart is one thing, but responding wisely in the middle of chaos, in the carpool line, at the dinner table, or during a full-blown meltdown, that's where parenting is truly tested. He begins by reminding parents of something both grounding and humbling: parenting reveals your own heart as much as your child's. That truth stops you in your tracks. The moments when your child disobeys, argues, or pushes back, those moments expose not only their weaknesses but yours too. They reveal your patience, your humility, and your ability to lead from love instead of anger. Tripp encourages parents not to see this as failure, but as invitation. Every difficult moment with your child is a chance for you to grow in grace. Whose young daughter often ignored instructions. Instead of screaming or giving endless warnings, Tripp suggested she calmly come close, look into her daughter's eyes, and speak with quiet authority. "Come here, sweetheart." No yelling, no lectures, just connection and clarity. Over time, the child began to respond, not out of fear, but because she felt seen. Tripp calls this shepherding presence, guiding through connection, not control. Then, Tripp unpacks what discipline really means. The word, he reminds us, comes from the same root as disciple. It's not about punishment, it's about teaching. The goal of discipline isn't to make a child pay for their mistakes, it's to guide them toward wisdom and responsibility. The focus is always restorative, not punitive. He paints a scene many parents will recognize. A child refuses to share toys. You could react with, "Stop being selfish," or, "If you can't share, I'm taking it away." But a heart-based response goes deeper. "I can see you really want that toy all to yourself. That's hard, isn't it? But when we share, we show love, the same kind of love others show us. You're still correcting, but you're also connecting, teaching empathy instead of fear." Tripp believes that these conversations build moral understanding far better than commands ever could. Rules tell children what to do, heart-guided discipline helps them understand why it matters. He also talks about consistency, one of the hardest things for parents to maintain. Children feel secure when boundaries don't change from day to day. But Tripp also reminds parents that consistency doesn't mean rigidity. True consistency is rooted in principle, not pride. If you're wrong, admit it. If you've been too harsh, apologize. A child who sees their parent own mistakes learns that strength and humility can live in the same heart. He shares a story of a father who disciplined his son out of anger. Later, realizing he'd overreacted, he sat down and said, "I was wrong to shout at you. I let my frustration get the best of me. You didn't deserve that tone." The father expected his son to shrug it off, but instead, the boy began to cry, not because of guilt, but because he felt loved and respected. That moment did more to build trust than any lecture could have. Tripp explains that humility in parenting isn't weakness, it's modeling grace. Children learn forgiveness best by watching it in action. And when they see you practicing self-control, they realize discipline isn't something done to them, it's something you live into practical strategies for staying emotionally grounded. Tripp encourages parents to pause before reacting. When anger rises, take a deep breath, whisper a prayer, or even step out of the room for a moment. It's not about being perfect, it's about being intentional. He writes, "You can't lead your child to calm if you're lost in chaos." Another key principle Tripp explores is the idea of natural consequences versus arbitrary punishment. Instead of creating punishments disconnected from the behavior, guide your child toward the real-world result of their choices. For example, if your child leaves their bike in the rain, instead of yelling, calmly explain that the rust that forms is a natural result of not taking care of their things. The lesson is learned through experience, not fear. He also discusses the importance of prayer, not as a last resort but as a daily tool for wisdom. Parenting, Tripp says, requires supernatural patience because you're shaping an eternal soul. He encourages parents to invite God into every moment, before correction, before conversation, even before conflict. When you lead with prayer, you lead with peace. Tripp doesn't shy away from hard truths either. He acknowledges that there will be days when you feel like you've failed, when your child pushes every button, when nothing seems to work. In those moments, he reminds parents to remember the long game. Parenting is not about winning the day, it's about nurturing a lifetime. God is more interested in your faithfulness than your success, he says. Stay faithful to the process, and trust the seeds you've planted. He shares one final story, a teenager who often talked back to his parents, defied curfews, and ignored rules. Instead of reacting with lectures or punishments, the parents began to pray with him before bed, even on the worst nights. Over time, those quiet prayers softened the walls around his heart. It wasn't the discipline that changed me, the teen later said. It was that they never gave up on me. And that's what chapter 11 ultimately teaches. Shepherding a child's heart isn't a strategy, it's a way of life. It's not about control, it's about consistent love. It's not about forcing change, it's about planting truth. And it's not about getting results now, it's about raising a child who, years from now, will look back and say, my parents didn't just correct me, they understood me. Tripp ends with a simple, profound reflection: your child's heart is the field where you sow every day. You may not see growth immediately, but love, truth, and grace never return empty. Parenting, in this light, becomes less about managing behavior and more about ministering to the heart, day by day, word by word, 12. Moment by moment. Parenting can feel like a long journey through changing seasons. Some days are bright and peaceful, others feel like storms. In this final chapter, Tedd Tripp reminds parents that the goal is not perfection, it's faithfulness. You're not raising flawless children, and you yourself won't be flawless either. But you can create a home rooted in grace, where both you and your children grow in wisdom, patience, and love. He begins by saying something every tired parent needs to hear: you are not alone in this work. Every family, every home, every child's story has challenges. And even the best parents lose patience, question themselves, and sometimes feel defeated. But the beautiful thing, he says, is that parenting is not just about what you do, it's about who you're becoming in the process. Tripp invites parents to take a long view of their role, to see beyond the tantrums, the teenage moods, and the daily struggles. He reminds them that the seeds they plant today may not bear fruit for years. Just because you don't see immediate results doesn't mean your efforts are wasted. He writes, God works in quiet ways, often below the surface. What looks like small progress today may become a strong root tomorrow. He tells the story of a mother who worried constantly about her 10-year-old son's stubbornness. He resisted chores, argued about homework, and rolled his eyes at every rule. She feared she was failing as a parent. Tripp encouraged her to stay the course, to keep connecting, keep listening, and keep guiding his heart rather than controlling his behavior. Years later, that same boy grew into a young man known for his deep empathy and strength. I always knew my mom cared about what was going on inside me, he said. That's the power of consistency, the quiet, unseen influence that lasts longer than any rule or consequence. Tripp explains that the best parenting happens when love leads, not fear. Fear makes us grasp for control, fear that our kids will fail, that they'll make bad choices, or that we're not doing enough. But control can't create wisdom. Love, on the other hand, invites trust. When your child knows that your love isn't conditional, that your approval doesn't disappear when they fall short, their heart stays open. And an open heart is teachable. He also reminds parents that children learn most from what they see in us. A home where parents model honesty, humility, and forgiveness becomes a safe space for children to do the same. When you admit your mistakes, your child learns that it's okay to be imperfect. When you forgive, they learn compassion. When you remain calm under pressure, they learn families can create rhythms that reinforce connection, not through grand gestures, but through simple consistency. Shared meals without screens, evening walks, bedtime talks, prayer before the day begins, these quiet moments build the kind of love that holds a family together. He says, children remember less of what you say and more of how you made them feel. A calm presence in chaos, a gentle hand after a mistake, those are the memories that stay. He also speaks about hope, hope when parenting feels hard, when change feels slow, or when your child seems distant. Hope, he explains, comes from remembering that transformation is a process. You're not just guiding behavior, you're nurturing a soul that is still becoming. Growth rarely looks linear, it's often messy, uneven, and unpredictable. But it's real. Tripp gives the image of a shepherd watching over his flock through the night. The sheep wander, the terrain shifts, storms come, but the shepherd stays. Not because it's easy, but because it's love. In the same way, a parent's steady love becomes the anchor for a child's heart. Even when they stray, they remember the voice that called them gently back. He shares a story about a father and his grown daughter. For years, she had pushed against every boundary, sneaking out, lying, refusing guidance. Many nights, the father sat in prayer, wondering if anything he said had ever reached her. Years later, she called him in tears. "Dad," she said, "I still hear your voice in my head when I make choices. You never gave up on me. Thank you." Tripp says that's what it means to shepherd, not to control the path, but to stay faithful through it. You may not always see the results of your love right away, but they are forming deep roots in your child's soul. He closes the book by reminding parents that the most important part of shepherding a child's heart is relationship. Relationship built on grace, understanding, and truth. Your authority as a parent flows not from fear or power, but from connection. A child who feels loved, heard, and guided is far more likely to listen, trust, and follow. He writes, "Rules without relationship breed rebellion. Relationship without truth breeds confusion. But truth and love together shape the heart." Parenting, at its core, is an act of faith. You plant, you water, you wait, and you trust that the seeds of love, patience, and grace will bear fruit in time. Tripp leaves parents with one final reflection: the goal is not to raise perfect children, but to point them toward a perfect love. That love, steady, forgiving, patient, and kind, is what ultimately shapes a child's heart and helps them grow into secure, compassionate listening. He would say this: you don't have to get it all right. You just have to stay close. Keep loving. Keep listening. Keep showing grace, to your child, and to yourself. Because parenting isn't about controlling outcomes. It's about walking beside your child as both of you learn what love really means. So, as you end this reflection, let these words rest gently on your heart. Parenting isn't about getting it right every time. It's about loving your child the way grace loves you, unconditionally, patiently, and with hope that never quits. You're not just raising a child. You're shaping a soul, one conversation, one moment, one prayer at a time. If you found this message meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more audiobook-style parenting summaries. Thank you for listening.